Hey everyone, thank you for joining us here. Thank you so much to the Grolier Poetry Bookshop for hosting us. Let's give them a round. My name is Janaka, Stucky. I'm the publisher of Black Ocean, which is based here in Boston with satellites, well really just one satellite in Chicago, and now we have like an official second HQ in LA with our own little warehouse where we inventory and ship our books out of, which is a really cool development. That being said, I want to kind of reiterate my thanks to the Grolier, because as a publisher who did not stop publishing books during the pandemic, it has been quite a wild ride in terms of like figuring out how to help our books find their audiences and their readers over the past few years. And it's also been heartbreaking to see some of my favorite indie bookstores around the country shutter because of the pandemic. And at the same time, it's been really amazing to see other indie bookstores really thrive and find ways to pivot and be really socially engaged. And I think this is a clear indicator that Grolier is doing something right. They're working with what they've been given, and they've been doing some great programming. And I know programming is also hard to do these days with short staffs and all that stuff. So I'm very appreciative to all the Grolier folks for having us tonight. And likewise, I'm so pumped to be here. This is really only like my second in-person poetry reading, I think, since the start of the pandemic. So I'm really excited to be sitting at my desk watching, and where's that camera? No shade, there you are. No shade on you guys for sitting at home and watching this over Zoom. I want to say thank you to all of you for joining us as well. I'm just very excited to be out and not sitting at my desk, because I do that all day anyway. That being said, we have a really fantastic lineup tonight. First of all, I'm just so excited to finally hear Keith read. We published Keith's book, Echo's Errand, in the fall. And I was trying to remember exactly when we signed the contract on your book, because it was at least a year before it came out, probably a little bit more than that, 21, something like that. So tonight, in the midst of it all. Yeah, tonight is the first time Keith and I have met in person since signing the contract for his book 2 years ago. Yeah, we already did, but we'll do another. So I'm really excited to be able to finally hear Keith read in person and to hear from this book that I've been waiting a couple of years now to hear Keith read from. And then it's just obviously it's great to be here with Lillian-Yvonne as well. Lillian-Yvonne is a what do we call you, editor at large at Black Ocean, and an incredible poet as well. And I was trying to remember how we met. The earliest interaction I can remember is I saw you post on social media somewhere that you were moving to Boston and you were looking for a gym.
Oh, yeah.
And I messaged you and we started talking about powerlifting, and I was like, if you're really into powerlifting, these are the gyms you should check out.
Oh, that was a while ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Awesome.
Yeah, but I don't remember how we became social media friends. Anyway, over the years, we've been able to do readings, and now we look at manuscripts together, and so I'm really excited, always a treat to hear you read. And then lastly, Joe McDonough, and Joe reminded me, honestly, I forgot about that piece of it, even though I had seen Joe read at this prison abolitionist themed reading at the Woodbury Poetry Room a number of years ago, pre-pandemic, obviously. And at that time, I was the dean of our local chapter of the Awesome Foundation, which gives out $1,000 grants every month to projects that we think are awesome. And so I saw Jill read. I thought she was great. I thought the work she was doing with prisoners was fantastic.
Awesome.
was awesome. And a couple months later, I saw this application come through in the Awesome Foundation from Jill for a grant to continue doing the work she was doing. And I just we have our monthly meetings, and I just advocated for it, and we were able to award Jill one of those $1,000 grants for her work with prisoners and writing. And it's weird to say that I forgot. I was so excited to see you read tonight.
So many lives.
Thank you. No, it's really awesome to hear. It's
absolutely.
awesome to hear.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I say that as kind of not to pat myself on the back, because it wasn't, a little bit was my money, but it wasn't really my money. But just because, as an indicator of how much I really believe in Jill's work and the writing and the work she's doing. So all that's to say, I'm really excited for the reading tonight. I hope you all are really excited for the reading tonight. Are you guys all excited for the reading?
Oh, yeah.
It's like a move tonight. Are you all excited? All right. Our first reader, speaking of Jill, is Jill McDonough. Is the author of American Treasure, Here All Night, Reaper, Where You Live, O. James, and Habeas Corpus. The recipient of 3, count them 3, pushcart prizes.
So far.
So far. And fellowships from the Lannan Foundation, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Fine Arts Work Center, the New York Public Library, the Library of Congress, and Stanford Stegner Program. She taught incarcerated college students through Boston University's prison education program for 13 years. Her work has appeared in Poetry, Slate, The Nation, The Threepenny Review, and Best American Poetry. She teaches in the MFA program at UMass Boston and started a program offering college reading and writing in 2 Boston jails. Please welcome Jill McDonough.
So yeah, starting that program in the 2 Boston jail, I'm like, I'm his height, I can fucking do this. That is in part because getting that Awesome Foundation grant let me go to the university and say, look, I'm getting external funding, let me do the thing. And then they let me do the thing, so thanks. I'm gonna start with a brand new poem because my friend Siri is here and she likes it, and it's forthcoming in the Threepenny Review, which is fancy. Not obsessive. Cheney's got these fake Cezannes. He makes them. Made a machine that can build Cezanne sketches line by line. These particular sketches Cezanne made over 30 years of this one Rubens painting in the Louvre. I am in a long, delicious fight with Cheney about whether or not his work is obsessive. Billy is dead now, but we had a conversation from 2005 until he hanged himself about whether or not my work is political. It is. He was totally right. But some people think political means insufficiently lyrical. They're wrong. Cezanne's 30 years of drawing this one figure over and over. Cheney's 127 whack-ass ways of looking at the figure, its painting, his paintings of the painting, Cezanne's sketches of the fucking painting. Good grief, said the woman on my tour of Donald Judd's 100 aluminum boxes. When we walked in together to the second building, holding a batch of 50 more. My work is also whack-ass obsessive. Who writes sonnets anymore? I mean everybody from over here, but randos don't know it's not weird. I write 50 sonnets about executions, however many villanelles about piloting drones. I have no problem with obsessive. But Cheney, who invents whole robots to recreate Cezanne's pencil strokes, their exact pressure, who calls my series of poems on James Bond movies bananas, doesn't like obsessive. Persistent, dogged, relentless, tireless, enthralled, absorbed. A lot of the words sound bad. Troubled, dominated, beset. But look at the antonyms. Bored, tired, wearied, appalled. Wouldn't you rather be fervent, impassioned, ardent, knee deep, balls out, fucking full.
All right.
So now I'm going to read from this new book, which is, I think this is the second time like you, I don't do this. I don't go out and do things. That's crazy. It's dangerous, you guys. It's really. So I will read poems from this book. I don't know. Maybe I'm not as tall as you, but I'm vain about it. So all right. This book has a lot of poems about, like, we already know that I teach in incarcerated spaces, and I work with women and men and also boys, and I also work with people who are not incarcerated, and I also go to a lot of museums, particularly museums that are kind of devoted to American atrocity, especially places that think that they're just like founding fathers' houses that have pretty wainscoting and wallpaper, and they don't understand that they're actually built on atrocity. Sonnet for reading aloud in kid jail. The boys in my local juvie want to work one-on-one, write stories, poems, mark up the stuff I give them. More than one kid at a time's less fun, more fussing, more holding back to show how tough they are. When one of them writes on the other's paper, the germophobic one loses his shit. I get it. Sit between them while they write their poems. Later, I read them aloud so they can hear how good they are. It's like a magic trick, their words in my grown-up voice. They still and listen, hear themselves, lean in on me like children, because they are children. Two boys, one on either side, a slow relax from anger into breathe, their warm weights, cool of classroom, fresh pencils, stacks of paper, me feeling them thinking, that sounds pretty good. Freedom. I talked to the students in jail. Well, is this? Yeah, I was going to say it's heroic couplets, but it's not. It's just couplets. No, don't worry about it. Freedom. I talked to the students in jail about freedom, how in America we obsess over it, write it over flags on t-shirts, spread it around under eagles. It has something to do with guns and fireworks, Harley-Davidson, New Hampshire, living free until you're dead. I tell the students I think the people fetishizing freedom don't mean it. They really mean, look over here, away from all the slavery we did, away from all the jail. I tell them they are the experts. Ask them to write what freedom means. Privacy is freedom. And if you feel held back, afraid to do something, you're not completely free. No fear of loss. No fear of hunger. No fear of pain. A body to call my own. A voice driven by my own mind. The security of a dry, warm place to sleep. To own my own time left here, being able to hold my son at night. Showering in private. Freedom to me is having the choice to walk away from a fight. Freedom a work in progress. Everyday freedom. The real work for us all. I don't always write about carceral spaces. Sometimes I write about my wife. And she's here. And, this is, her name's Josie, and she's like, in the bag. There she is. And so this is a poem about a thing she said one time. The Serious Downer. I told Josie when she dies, I am going to eat her face before I call the cops. They'll be on their way to pick up her dead body, and I won't be able to stop. Finally able to bite adorable chunks of her perfect cheeks, gnaw on the regal cleft of that much beloved chin. I am always already hot to chew on Josie somehow. The side of her hand, the part you press to frosted or fogged up glass to make a little baby's foot, one rough knuckle plugged up in the middle of the day at a red light, her cool hand on the stick. I tell her the EMTs for the dead, the morgue guys, will walk in on me, her blood by now darkening and crusting all over my mouth, me looking up like, dag, busted. Mouth agape, and also full of one last bite of her unchewed body. But it'll be so sad. You won't be there to think it's funny, I say. That would be the drag, adds Josie, nodding, complacent. That would be the serious downer of that situation. I have like whole poems where basically I'm just writing down shit that Josie says and putting it in meter, and people are like, oh my god, how did you do that? And I'm like, I don't know, just listen. Donuts in kid jail. Here is how often you see donuts in kid jail. Never. 0 times. Like seeing a cat or a dog, a cell phone, a white kid, a comfy chair. Just me and this one kid, same kid who wrote Monkey Rescue first time we worked together. He saved Junior from a fire. Then they got high by the pool. I drew hearts and stars in the margins, helped spell monkey, wrote, great job. They gave this kid 2 donuts, a small carton of milk, and we wrote imitations of one art, me with no breakfast yet. My stomach growled. The kid looked up, both of us remembering I have a body, that everybody gets hungry, whether or not they are free. This cracked us up, and he offered me a donut. So I said, you are a sweetheart, and I am never going to eat your donut, which made no sense to him. Dude, I have a car and money. I can walk out of here and buy a dozen as soon as you finish this poem. So he kept working. An empty classroom, one art, sharp pencil, still room. What are some things you have lost? Mother, father, sister, grandmother, school, ring, country, bracelet. The stomach kept growling. We kept laughing. He kept offering me a donut. Donut as distraction. Donut, a gift. Finally he said, look, I'm going to pee. Then you can eat the donut without me watching. Donut as test. He left and I said to the guard, hey, I'm going to eat that kid's donuts real quick like while he's gone. And the guard was horrified. Said he'd give me $5 to not touch the kid's donuts. Explained donuts are hard to come by in juvie. Blah, 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 donuts. Well, I'm just like, I was just kidding. I would never mess with the precious donuts. The kid came back and we finished his draft, which he asked me to keep till next time. And I drove away past Forest Hills and new condo construction, blissful monkey yoga studio, Whole Foods. Parked my car and walked into my house where no one hurts me, where I eat whatever I want. Spelling prostitutes. I volunteer at a juvie, call it kid jail. We play a homemade boggle, make all the words we can, make Mad Libs things with them like this. Lip split from slipping in shit. I sit and sip spilled spit. We write fast poems, rescues, give a lot of high fives. One kid loves fun facts. One, what would you do with $5 million? But then just says he'd give it to foster kids. A fun fact wants to buy the building. A bulldozer, knock the whole fucking kid jail down. Good call. I make him write a shopping list. Crowbar, hard hat, boots. Say you could rent a wrecking ball. A third says he'd spend his on, how do you say it, prototoot? He doesn't speak English so hot, doesn't know grown-up. Omit prostitutes, I say. P-R-O-S, spelling it for him, cracking up until Fun Fact says, Miss, that's because he was a prostitute. Some split seconds in kid jail I trip over, slip in my pocket to ponder later, indulge my rage or tenderness. I want to bulldoze down the house where he was hurt, reset to spin him back into an unharmed toddler, pluck his plump self up and hide from what from here we know will happen. I want to beat a pimp to death with a crowbar, rent a wrecking ball. But we only have an hour or so, an hour that's not about me, my precious, privileged, white-hot lily white heart. So I spell prostitute for a kid who was a prostitute. Or maybe not. Maybe none of these guys has ever been hurt. Maybe Fun Facts is fucking with me. I spell prostitute and say, oh man, you guys are so much more generous than me. I was going to buy a villa in Venice. Then they ask, what's a villa? And where is Venice? And I draw Italy on typing paper. Describe the Grand Canal and watery alleys. And floating up to columned villas on long wooden boats. Write gondola, canal, and Venice. Say they can visit my villa. Bring all their foster kids. They're prostitutes. I'm gonna read two more. And I'm so stoked to do a thing with you guys who are people in a place, who are free, and here we are. Look at all these books. It's delicious. I don't have to tell you anything about these. You'll get it. What a waste. I told Josie I'm going to write and publish a poem about your breasts called What a Waste. And she says, don't forget my ankles. It's true. Her ankles are sculpted, sharp and sleek and hollowed just where they should be. Cry out for high heels. There's something out of film noir, I tell her. No, she says, they're a fucking Bernini. What every woman wants, ankles and breasts like Josie's. Josie's perfect body, wasted in Carhartts, jockeys, Pendleton shirts. I want to gnaw on her left ankle like a chicken leg. Anybody would. And don't get me started on her breasts. But Josie's delicious, compact body isn't for us, gang. Josie gets to do whatever she wants with hers. What a waste, I tell her, while we laugh at whoever would say such a thing about someone else, another person, or her perfect body. Josie using it to live her perfect life. Isn't that crazy? People say what a waste about another person. Like, they're not for you. Stop. What a waste. What? Why you're not in charge of them?
That's a big waste.
Reading What a Waste to college boys.
Yeah. Yes.
I write a poem called What a Waste about Josie. About how even though sometimes I want to devour her whole, it's up to her what happens to the only body she has. I think this is a funny poem. I think I'm making a joke about consent, desire, marriage, maybe lesbian bed death, middle age, I don't know. This may be too meta, even for me. Anyway, I read it to some students while I'm a visiting writer. Two white boys raise their soft and earnest hands, so young, want to share with me and everyone else in the room their wide-eyed stories. How sometimes girls with beautiful bodies just don't want to fuck them. They both spoke with a kind of wonder, like, I get it, right? Like, how can that even be? And we shook our heads at the sad injustice of it. Sometimes even I can't tell when I am kidding anymore. I said, I know, man. Other people's bodies aren't for us. It sucks, right? And they nodded, taking that in, thinking it over. I guess for the very first time. Poetry. Getting so much nothing done. Thank you so much.
Let's hear it one more time for Joe. fun anecdote as we settle some people in. In my early 20s, when I started my master's program, I started working as an undertaker in the funeral business. And so I got really interested in death rituals. And in my mid-20s, I actually reached what do they call it, an inflection point in my life, where I was trying to choose between pursuing a PhD in death studies and social anthropology here at Harvard, or starting this indie poetry press I had dreamed of doing since I was 15. And here I am.
What a waste!
What a waste! No, but the reason I bring it up is because I was fascinated by cannibalism as I was, I was like, I need to go to Harvard to read about death rituals. I'll just do that in my free time, and I've been doing that for the past 30 years. So, but what's interesting is that the vast majority, like 90+% of indigenous cannibalism historically is what is classified as affectionate cannibalism, which is ritually consuming your dead as a way to, or sometimes you're living, as a way to, as a way to just like integrate the power of your ancestors and all those things, and celebrate their life and the passing of the body. And it's only this like very small percentage of cannibalism which has become like sensationalized through colonialism as like really like this aggressive headhunting cannibalism. But most of it is affectionate cannibalism. Anyway.
Good to know. Thank you.
Glad
I'm on the right side of cannibalism.
But I didn't do that PhD. I started Black Ocean, and that brings us to our next reader. Keith, this is your first time reading from your book in public, right?
It is.
And so I'm really excited to be here. It is, as a writer myself, it is like one of the great pleasures and privileges of my life to help other writers bring their books into the world. Like second or third to being a dad, probably. that's my privilege and my pleasure. So I'm very happy to be here with Keith and all of you tonight to celebrate his book, Echoes Errand. Keith Jones is the author of Echoes Errand and the poetry chapbooks Blue Lake of Tensile Fire, Shorn Ellipses, The Lucid Upward Ladder, Fugue Meadow, and Surface to Air, Residuals of Basquiat. His poems have appeared in Barrow Street, Chicago Review, Denver Quarterly, Flag and Void, Harvard Review, and elsewhere. He teaches in the Africana Studies Department at the University of Massachusetts, Boston, and is the poet in residence at the New England Conservatory. Please welcome up Keith Jones.
So I've got to wade the waters between cannibalism and death. Is that what the night brings?
Yes.
Yes. So I'm so. Can I see everybody? We all good? Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. All right. So it is. This is really a magical moment for me. Largely because, among the reasons, I'm so grateful that you could all be here, and those of you also who are visiting or attending by other means. This space was one of the spaces that I first visited with Bill Corbett, who is an ancestor now. I want to think that he is in this space with us, but he was a very important figure for me. He was a very important figure for Boston poetry, and so. Being here tonight, it's hard not to want to conjure him. And that is, I think in the spirit of that, it's related to the work of these poems, because these poems are really, they're about the gathering of lost voices, of los olvidados, of silenced and erased, of dispersed, of diasporized, that is, voices of the diaspora. And so this is really a poetics, if you will, of voice. Echoes Aaron, that air, there's the homophonic resonance with air, which is the air of Aaron, E-R-R, the air of A-I-R, that which is dispersed and among us, and that we all exist among and within. And then there is the H-E-I-R, which is the inheritance of all of those voices, both with us and the long unfolding of them, and the long ongoingness of them as well. And something of that is the spirit of trying to hold the space for those in this text. So, wild lips a wound. A risen echo of furthest edge, argent. Your wild lips a wound, a swollen incision. Surface effects shredded to mute. Frantically thinned like a dead man forever talking, never saying a word he meant. Chatter worn as the wound over the actual grows fonder, more profuse, bridles a bit, a torrent now, this prize cut, this creased propellant, where needs tremor spills out, drips, seeps, presses up, some rusty ledge in you, you crawl, you slip, you overstate, the sparse, tilled passage, the graven burrow, you still flounder in. Voyages forgetting, asymmetric, aerialist stove, warmth and deeper recesses, you say, abandoned, sink, rise, surface again, list the haggard craft, monochromatic, no longer in luck. Of his ilk and symphony, a new renewal delayed, long kept in pretty snares, bursts which loosen, which recall the pretty waves, she says, of beauty's wake, airily made, barks cutting arcs in water. Lifts an archaic curse. No palm tree, no laurel, no swan, you are sharp feeling, rushed exitless fall, arc life to infidel, like speech to stutter, lifts an archaic curse. Note how days encumbrance took eons, she said. Hammered thin, fine crater lake, light, oblique, hoofbeats, mad rush, fumes of final days, turning you, yes, contemporary, most alive, drifting up from long ago on bone white night. You, like radio, you, like song, you, soften me, strip me bare, which is why I like your white cliffs best. Bald into paper whites and plinth, beginnings echo, revenant echo, forms echo, prow, stern, keel, blue streak of oar, bled through all aspects of it. Enter walls, discrepant waves, backbone of seeing's boat, hoofbeat, beat slap of skin, lost at sea, sea is west, where sunset is, sea is the weary need of feather, of wood, where I too look entire to float. In a field of false time. No cure, ornery, first language, then not, then nothing. Wrists elaborately bound, dissolves little by little, she says. A field of false time. It's not worth explaining what ritual does not preserve. My voice scribbles it. Blown rake of tears. Or do they? Or are they, she says, confessions from above. Loss you can do little with, bent long ways into silence, silence worsens the roar. Wake of wave, blown rake of tears, Xenophons swirling, loss, 10,000 men attuned to the void, a tired cry, quick, the cause, wars, inexhaustible echo. 4 black girls, Kitty, Genovese, napalm, cruel mounds, where the heart wrench is, where wrong lies in fields and seas unburied. shade of, bound to you. Bound to you, too elliptical, what the sun will efface in a different motif. Plainest of threads, speak of your renewal. The sky is a witch seed that blooms, washes away, cleans, is silence, a crisp bed sheet, canvas, page, overboard, and overbearing. The leaping is inside. You, you're hurt. Far away, the eyes will face entangled fields, the sea, the first experiment. No fences, if desire is. No fences, make do. You let gold return to unquicksilvered parts, to feldspar, to blind riverway. Let it sink back in to earth, to burn bright alone among roots, quiet grubs, and clusters. You who miss nocturnal light, passional underground stars, warmth in what it is descending, a shiver, frail, it keeps in voyage. Salt-flaked, shimmering skin, don't you remember, is sinking. Man overboard, your swollen lamb openmost, bursting within, sunk under the weight of testimony. Lavish foam X, where middle sea began, swimmer not yet free, a wind forever panting, perishing, final facts there where myth went massive. What the page won't take, weary of its own echo. Wake, infer, wake, again, here. You clutch at Euripides, moon at quartermast. Ravish this, indigo, island air, summer's wheeling advance, crinkling stubbled earth to lean on, a vanishing line, heteroclane, reeds in the dying light of holy water. The old problem of the present is new. Straying cloud men seized by the happy short life of labor, of sense, blind to you. Woman, you say, old sailcloth, her pronoun yellowing. Watch how the moon slicks the riverway, mirrors what will is. Will creeps through, topples its virgin self, as old ways of earth cluster round, as present crafts conceal you, as tidal winds reach further in and out, woven child, rags make you coast. Through salt and twisted kelp, wishing too much, voyage proof, this century, terror white. Sheet music. 1. You listen long enough and wander long enough and wait, as godsends accumulate or don't. Did as aerialists will the air to give way. One thinks of siblings, speedboats, long waves redundant, blue barrier, blue beneath. 2. And then there was water, a barrage of grief, glyph in the middle, multiple and staggering. I give this machine to you, she says. Stolen bright God, skin's raiment of wonder, not so, wherever, where the ladder leads. Because fire rages, pleats upon the water, washed up on shore of day, a minor new world among us. 3. Let accident be everything, all at once, rough paradiso of day, some force shoreward inside, coeval, lantern you drew in the chiaroscuro of intimate. 4. You say applaud, I say rebuttal, folded animal circumference, near gravel, near grain, a songbird's plume you cannot command. 5. You went where the young oar was, adrift upon a mercy, a phenomenon distinctly plated like solar light, hammered thin. There is nothing new, nothing here gigantic, limonada, mob rule, you of grass, blade, and sunbridge, of midge and moat, one long molecular being on this island of print. Just a few more in this last sequence. Dusk water light. I have poured over that and you, hated how honest the torrent is, and let it be mine, not sheltered, neither poplar nor linden, the shade shattering just where you left. And I wonder in advance and cannot wait, painting the phosphorescent side of leaves, where mind and cloud make page. And I sail my own transfigurations, you say. These, long time ago, pyre as crisp curtailment fulfills belief. Permission is not what I ask of you. Permission is not what I ask of you. The great wandering is into the interior. I tried to think in singulars, she says, in numbers long since expired, and you are one of those impossibilities, a lucid upward ladder. It is all proximity, listless, misspent, as circles tied into theorems. Why thief my miracles from me? In the realm of my own uncertainty, in my own upward draft, where wind was first to walk on water, I remain with you, a misadventure. I sleep, I avail all further witnessing. These animal cone dwellings that depart, upturned feet to flames, is a corona of deep breathing, you say, in these matters of devotion. If only our exhalations could cut a hole through the wishes we expose. As gulls unspool, cross and keen bow, haul the sea air in, quiet engine, the crag trim ocean, shot through, barnacled, brown flecked, inland relay. And the last poem. Echoes Errand. You send to embrace the sweetest of tender sips from your cup for always. The moving chords moving move us, and so the gale and the antler horn, the quiver nest where I bury myself in your gown and drink of you. We pause, we glow, and go out again. This thirst is spiral. You, I, rest, succumb to, shield to, skin of, tally with. Say then, I'm your was, your ipsiety of water. Thank you.
Let's hear it one more time for Keith. And our final reader this evening, as I mentioned, is an editor with us at Black Ocean, and they actually are the ones that brought Keith's work to my attention back. We have Lillian-Yvonne to thank for the book and for being here tonight, because we're here celebrating Keith's book. So, and yeah, as I mentioned before, I think we met talking about powerlifting and Poets Who Lift. It's a small cohort of us around the country. There's like I feel like there's a good anecdote in there somewhere about like what makes Lillian-Yvonne so great and so special and such an invigorating member of our poetry community, and I can't really like state it in a pithy and poignant way other than to just state it. They're a champion of other people's work, just like a brilliant mind in and of their own right. And I'm really happy to be closing out the evening with Lillian-Yvonne tonight. Lillian-Yvonne Bertram is the author of Travesty Generator, a book of computational poetry that received the Poetry Society of America's 2020 Anna Rabinowitz Prize for interdisciplinary work and longlisted for the 2020 National Book Award for Poetry. Their other poetry books include How Narrow My Escapes, Personal Science, A Slice from the Cake Made of Air, and But a Storm is Blowing from Paradise. Their fifth book, Negative Money is forthcoming from Soft Skull Press in 2023. They are an associate professor in the Department of English, Africana Studies, and Art and Design at Northeastern University. They also direct the Chautauqua Institution Writers Festival. Please welcome up Lillian.
Okay, I'm short. How do I make this for short people? Short for people. Ouch. Let me adjust the camera. Oh boy. It's lovely to be here. It's such an honor to be here celebrating you and your book, Keith. Congratulations. And to see you again, Jill and Colin. Did we break it? We'll just have to make it work. I didn't write down on a piece of paper or flag what I was going to read. But I'm going to read a poem from my second book, A Slice from the Cake Made of Air, if I can find it. And then move on to poems from the forthcoming book, Negative Money. I'll look at the table of contents. There you go. In the white world, you hope it's not true, but every door is green. Behind them, histrionic syntax complicates the money shot. Ooh, come wagging through the air. Ooh, marketing genius. The miraculous garage is full of red Cadillacs. There is a magazine for every question. Several instructions for timber framing. Did the ancients know about catnip? A creature crawls from some dark place, bites you in the leg, then crawls back. Did the ancients know about Pomeranians? Described as Canis pomeranus, their tails often curl over their backs. I'll marry in, then out. It is the feeling I had and still hold for strolling under a sky so blue and visible and starred. In this book, Negative Money, shout out to Keith for being an early reader of this manuscript. There are sets of poems that appear on these black pages. And these poems are actually sort of like me hijacking an academic text and writing myself into it. And the text that they hijack is a book called The Radical Spaces of Poetry. And the poems actually comment on work in previous books that I've written and on the poems themselves in this book. So this is kind of like this whole meta thing. The dream world is a place Lillian can reach through the body. For Lillian, their black body is both fleshy material, which exists in the material world, and social construct. It has a special place. As Maurice Merleau-Ponty said, the outline of my body is a frontier which ordinary spatial relations do not cross, although for the black body it is a frontier always crossed or at least threatened by members of the human family, the gaze of men in a park, or in Lillian's own fantasies. The more present Lillian's black body, the more Lillian responds to people watching them in a park, and Lillian enters a dream world where they can escape to the outside of the limitations of raced, gendered, and sexualized public space. The range of possibilities offered by the dream world are against the limitations of the daily, is illustrated by the repeated ampersand. From a particular person in a particular place and with all the restrictions that brings, and where Lillian is located through their previous relationships to the place and the people in it, the black body and the poem about the black body become a space of possibility. Like the ocean, like a continent, it is a place in which I marry in, then out. Under it I stroll, a sky so blue and visible and starred. It is a place that makes action possible, but not compulsory, a place in which Lillian can do or not do what they like. Yet for Lillian, pleasurable though the abstraction might be, and whether it takes Lillian to some place else, such as the imagined geography of over there, or the eroticized fantasy of the dream world, the black body must still exist between the imminent experience of everyday life and the possibilities of the abstractions of the transcendent, as when Lillian says, "You hope it's not true." The poems, as you can see, they also talk about Lillian in the third person. Colonizer money. Haven't yet bought the plantation where we were slaves, but bought a condo from a Confederate soldier reenactor. Saged, this is the true story, saged the shit out of it and moved in. Dignity strikes when opposing forces collide. Loud ballots took a swipe at my gut, so nothing smelled decent those harrowing years of purgation. On the street we kill each other, take the inverse and kill each other again. I haven't yet bought drone warfare or votes, but bought candor, misunderstood maxims, and an hour in the deprivation tank where the last man to float here smudged the starry night and fouled up the salt water with his scabs. Of which the body is one. There are shifting relationships between the figure of Lillian and the context they find themselves in, and between self and others. We move from the perceiving and perceived black body and through a fleshy biological black body and a black body that is constructed within the social, the local, the familiar, and the abstractions of the global. This is a black body genetically and emotionally linked to the family and to the domestic spaces and familiar locales in which family relationships are played out. It is also a black body that is both a vehicle of a more conceptual traveling toward unfamiliar places, which are there rather than here, and a black body that is transcended by time and space and that in turn transcends these. This poem has a footnote with another poem in it. I'll start by reading that poem. That's in the footnote. You'll see why. Yet another ending of mine. No way I am still this loss. And him a once again wrong man, bubbling blood to the points of my skin. Yes, I bottled a galleon at the lid of my neck to act the metaphor of never comprehending this body. So brown, buoyant woman. Yes, I fell from my mother, who searches seas for me since. Once a box of matches exploded in my face's kitchen. Once I let a man's penis inside because I was bored, and this bored me ever after. To sober up, stand your ashes in plain sight. Time escapes from all deeds but this. A fleshy biological Negro. Lillian is therefore in relationship to the spatial context in which viewing takes place, a space that includes both inside and outside of Lillian, and that Lillian is part of and also produces. The space is not a pre-planned grid system through which Lillian moves or is constructed to move, nor is it a genetically programmed schema that is instinctively followed. It is not constructed prior to entering or moving through it, but is produced through the interaction and reaction between Lillian and the world. And it is Lillian who is always moving, Lillian who is never static, even for the duration of a single act of viewing. The narrative in the viewing develops a relationship by the end that is different from the beginning, as when Lillian writes, "Once I let a man's penis inside, and then time escapes from all deeds but this." The conceptual space of the succeeding, more abstract section of the viewing unfolds before us. Which deed? weaving together Lillian's own physical experiences. Lillian sees themselves in relation to others within a symbolic order, and a Lillian in movement who is moving between things and toward things, and who always has the intention of moving towards something. As a consequence, Lillian can see things, or imagine seeing things, from different perspectives. I believe the far fields are made of glass and research. Corn clad and thick on moans. There at the edge of the wheel, the tar bubbles burst, and they kept on bursting as long as the mile stayed a mile, which it did. What they did not want to speak of, the men burned out there, pasture, polio rags, poplin junk, as long as there was a day to foul, which was a long while. Tar a wincing mammal. Someone asked if I missed my friends, the more erotic pints we shared. But I squeezed and pulled one damp loaf down from the shelf after another. Donning a white man's mania all his own, Teddy Roosevelt believed in boar hunts and war-suckled men. He'd have something to say about this enterprising sunset, the shivering alfalfa, trim and sweet like champagne. Temporarily full of the material limitations of time and space. The image of the fields as glass, and Lillian as both missing and missed, runs throughout the poem. Lillian addresses the fields as being made of glass, the concrete, and research, the abstract, in the title and first line, and moves from an image of personifying the corn to one of domestic limitation, where Lillian squeezed and pulled one damp loaf down from the shelf after another, to the last line where another agricultural life awaits. Lillian develops the inherently colonialist image of manifest destiny and frontierism with the lines, dining a white man's mania all his own. Teddy Roosevelt believed in boar hunts and war-suckled men. He'd have something to say about this enterprising sunset, the shivering alfalfa, trim and sweet like champagne. The simple image of open fields is rendered more complex, is always more complex, as no such field existed as open for the cultivating as Roosevelt would have added. The corn, by being clad and thick on moans, is embodied. Lillian is seeking an impossible escape, not only by taking the roads through the fields, imagining Lillian can leave male mania and colonization behind, but Lillian is naively trying to achieve an escape from history and time. This is not possible, as long as the mile stayed a mile, which it did. Lillian cannot transcend, escape, or levitate away from it. The wincing mammal is an entrapping, bubbling tar that lies within Lillian's own body and reaches through other bodies, as well as being potentially geographically distant. Go a few lines further, and what they did not want to speak of, the men burned out there. Pasture, polio rags, poplin junk, as long as there was a day to foul, which was a long while. I'll read the title poem of the book, called Negative Money. It's not out yet. Sorry. Negative money. So delirious from drought, my town went singing to seeds. Those who stayed could barely make a Sunday choir. Not enough juice in the county to plump up the memory of water or a single itinerant tomato. I made the same poisoned meal. Days like 2 midnights in a jar, and it takes twice as much money to live the way a cactus lives on air. My men took to cards and drink as punishment for stricken soil. The dust blew so bad, and like anyone, I made a list of names I wouldn't mind dressing in a child of my own. We paid a charlatan to shoot rain out of clouds, but the dynamite tied to kites proved more useless than mud. Like any good charlatan, he never returned. Enough pale misery. Now we are poor in every corner of the word, not a pot to piss in, or skin of a fig to suck on. And I'll close with the poem, Facts About Deer. Because this is still a poem with an animal in it, and I am still trying, I might say it offers you its meaty heart with no lasting conditions. If you've seen a struck deer thrash its life out on a shoulder, a burner that clicks without flaming, you know how they seize to death. But who cares what I think? But I wished just then to have a knife. I wished I knew a little about guns and to own one or to know something sorcerous. Because nothing but blood tastes like blood, I've cut myself for its coppery flavor. Only God knows I'm good. My mother says I've no scruples. The way I make no claims to being a permanent person. How my move from husband to ex-husband came on a wave of expediency and self-promotion. If you've gone to the store and left behind a life, the kind that comes with seating, spare change jars, someone's green thumb, then you know how I anger at the woman shrieking behind the wheel of her cracked Ford Escape, phone to face, nose spasming on the shoulder. Someone should knuckle up and kill this deer. A roadway in America and there's no policeman on hand to squash a net? It's early evening and the sky's poetically blameless gray fills your throat with the thick despair so familiar to the heavily indebted. Mountaineers know you can't save anyone on goodwill. That high altitude is minus morality. So, a little bit of confessionalism. Or 2 truths and a lie. I married a man I met on an airplane. I killed that deer. I have no patience for even the most cherubic of children. Thank you.
Let's hear it one more time for Lillian. So before we disband, I used to curate a monthly poetry series at the Brookline Booksmith years ago called Bash. And at the Booksmith they had these posters up around the bookstore that say, when you buy a book from an independent bookstore, you just did 3 great things. And I don't remember exactly what those things were. No, they enumerated them. And so when I would close out Bash, I would say, when you, if you do like 1 great thing, that kind of exonerates you from like a day of shitty stuff that you did, right? Like kind of make it a little bit of even. If you do like 2 great things, I mean, that's pretty good. That's like, well, whatever you did today on Friday, you got a clean slate. And maybe kind of gives you permission to do some crappy stuff tomorrow, because you did 2 great things if you buy a book from an independent bookstore. If you do 3 great things, well, like you got like a get out of jail free card for the whole weekend coming up. And when you buy an independently published book from an independent bookstore, you've probably done like 6 great things, which gets you through like the whole next week, sails you right into next weekend. So whether that independently published book is a Black Ocean book or whether it's one of the many hundreds and hundreds of books on this shelf, I beseech you, consider buying a book before you leave tonight. Support the Grolier. If you don't know what book to get, ask myself or one of the poets who read. I could like practically just throw a dart in this room and tell you about a book that I recommend. So you know, I started by saying that it's incredible that the Grolier has made it through the pandemic. It is through the grace of people like you, through the community that supports them. Let's support them for hosting us tonight. Thank you everyone for coming out.